Bad news, more bad news, more bad news. David McBride. As you guys remember, my first show, I talked about my friend David McBride, who was a whistleblower from Australia. He was a military lawyer, a military attorney who saw a lot of wrongdoing and a lot of war crimes that he thought were being covered up, attempted to go through so-called proper channels and I've said this before, I've done a lot of research and studying and interviewing and discussing of whistleblowers, and pretty much every whistleblower I think that I've ever come across has attempted to go through proper channels, because that's always a big like finger wagging thing that people do with whistleblowers, where you should have gone through proper channels. They all do. And when that fails, they go to the media or try to expose it in other ways. And that's what David did. And he was convicted. He had to end up pleading guilty to one charge, and he was sentenced to nearly 6 years in prison. So he applied for a appeal in, I think, the end of February, and that took forever, but we finally got a decision on that. And it pisses me off because the decision, it literally, it was like 3 minutes. This court hearing was like 3 minutes long, which really grinds my gears, because they made him wait for months for this decision. Months, from the end of February until just like a couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago. And for them to make him wait for that long, and then walk into court and take 3 minutes to say, no, fuck you, it really just pisses me off. I really can't express how much it pisses me off. So this that I have up on the screen is an article from Consortium News. Please go support Consortium News. They do really incredible work on a whole host of issues. They did a great job of covering Assange. They've been covering the McBride stuff, but they cover everything from Palestine. I mean, Joe and Kathy, Elizabeth Voss, they have a whole host of people over there working, and they do fantastic stuff. So go support them. They are truly independent media. So go support them. So as this article says, a 3-judge panel at the Supreme Court in Australia's capital Wednesday spent less than 1 minute dismissing all appeals by David McBride, sending the government whistleblower back to prison, where he is serving a 6-year sentence for exposing his country's war crimes in Afghanistan. McBride appeared only briefly in court and waved to his lawyer, family, and the few supporters who were able to make it into the courtroom. After the judges pronounced their decision, he was whisked off back to his Canberra jail cell, leaving his ex-wife in tears. His attorney and a few supporters were left stunned and ashen-faced as they reeled from the ruling. McBride's next step is to ask leave of the High Court, Australia's highest court, to hear his case. That could take many months with no guarantee the appeal will be heard. The Supreme Court on Wednesday seemed to have wanted to minimize the number of McBride supporters in the courtroom. They did this with Assange too. We'll get to that. As previous hearings have produced scenes of outbursts of standing ovations from the packed public gallery. One of the judges even admonished the few in attendance not to protest. This time, McBride's name and courtroom number were not posted on a large board in the court's lobby, leaving his supporters scrambling to find out where his hearing was. By the time they arrived, McBride and the judges were already gone 3 minutes after the hearing had begun. So with Assange, they actually moved his hearings to the smallest possible courtroom in the courthouse, and then made the media use like an overflow room where they had to listen in via audio. They do this this is kind of part of the psychological warfare of all of this stuff, which, I mean, is another thing that pisses me off. So let me go here. Okay. The judges found on Wednesday that there was no wrong decision of law and so let me just say this. So McBride pleaded guilty to the charges against him after the trial judge in November of 2023 denied him a public interest defense, and then allowed government agencies into the courtroom to seize his evidence in the name of protecting national security. So he was ready to fight this, like really go after it and fight it. And then they decided last minute to deny him a public interest defense. And then they allowed government agents to literally come in where his lawyers were and take the evidence that he was going to use to fight this case and remove it from the courthouse. And that left him really with no other option other than to just plead guilty and see where the cards would fall. He was really left with no other option. So he was then convicted of unlawfully communicating naval, military, or Air Force information other than in the course of his quote-unquote official duty, as well as publishing confidential information outside of his quote-unquote duty. And then he was also convicted of theft of government property. So he appealed the conviction because he argued that there was a miscarriage of justice since his guilty pleas were entered as a consequence of a, quote, wrong decision of law. That's what they call it there. The judge's rulings is what the judge's ruling says. And then this was, quote, whether by way of the appellant's oath of enlistment extended to acting in the public interest, even where in contravention of lawful general order. So basically what he was saying was that, yes, he took an oath to serve his country and all of that stuff. But he, in his opinion, he also took an oath to serve the people of Australia. And so while exposing this stuff may have gone against his oath to the military, he felt he was still serving his oath to the Australian people by exposing the truth in the best way that he knew how, which I agree with him. So in relation to that, the judges found on Wednesday that there was no wrong decision of law and no miscarriage of justice and dismissed the conviction appeal. They contended in their decision that McBride really didn't want to reveal war crimes, but rather to cover them up. Quote, in taking and disclosing the confidential material, the appellant was not attempting to bring allegations of war crimes committed by Australian soldiers to the public attention, the judges wrote. On the contrary, the appellant's concern was not that alleged war crimes by Australian soldiers were being under-investigated by the ADF. Rather, his concern was the converse, that such allegations were being over-investigated by the chain of command, which is absurd. Obviously, McBride has argued that this is a deceptive interpretation. He says that he complained that minor incidents in and after 2013 in Afghanistan were being over-investigated, while major war crimes in 2012 were being covered up. So basically what that means is in exposing this stuff, David felt like they were attempting to over-investigate minor things in order to make it look as if they were doing something about what he was trying to expose. But they weren't addressing the real issue, the hardcore issues of the war crimes from 2012, if that makes sense. So basically he went to them, hey, here's the stuff that I've uncovered. It's bad stuff. We should really address this. And they tried to like paper over it by addressing some little things rather than addressing the big key issues that he was raising, which is really unsurprising. I think nobody would be shocked by that. But it really pisses me off that they're trying to skew his intentions and make it look as if it's something that it's not. But I mean, it's, again, not surprising. So sentence appeal rejected. The sentence of nearly 6 years was appealed on the grounds of McBride's motivation to wrong and injustice, that he believed what he was doing was lawful because of his duty to the public, which he held took precedence over duty to the king, which is what I was talking about. There were also considerations of McBride's mental health. A reduced sentence or community service was considered, but those were also denied. David dealt with a whole host of depression, anxiety. He dealt with some drug and alcohol abuse, all kinds of stuff. He has a service dog, like he has PTSD sort of stuff. So they tried to bring that up in order to either get a reduced sentence or just give him community service. The courts have taken a very hard line against McBride, a nonviolent offender who revealed actual evidence of Australian war crimes following his duty under the Nuremberg principles to do so. Eddie Lloyd, McBride's attorney, told Consortium News that the next step was to file an application for leave to appeal the case to the High Court, Australia's highest court. She said McBride would not be due for a parole hearing until August of 2026. So like 14 more months, which is insane to me that he could potentially, I mean, he really could potentially be in there for like another 5 years or nearly 5 years. But he shouldn't be in there all. He shouldn't have been in there for one single day, not a single day. So that's very frustrating to me, but they are going to take it to the high court. And it's, again, this is a stand-up dude. I mean, I've never met him in person, but I've spoken to him numerous times. And I've mentioned it before on this show. He's the kind of guy that when I would interview him about his case, he would every single time, 100% of the time that I interviewed this guy, we would start talking about his case and he would find a way to change the subject to ask how Julian was doing. What can we do for Julian? Is he okay? How's his family? Like, he's just that kind of a guy. So it makes me very angry that somebody who's that good is being treated this way, especially by a government, the Albanese government. If you're not familiar with Anthony Albanese, he's been out here prancing around talking about how he wants to protect whistleblowers. Here's your chance, my guy. Protect a whistleblower. Get him out of jail. Make the phone call. And again, this is part of the reason why I was so frustrated with Assange endorsing that douche canoe. The hypocrisy is astounding. It is astounding to me that Anthony Albanese can pretend to care about whistleblowers and want to protect whistleblowers when this man sits in jail. So this was part of a statement that was released. You can find the full thing on his lawyer's Twitter page. And I think also they might have put it on David's Twitter page, which I'll bring that stuff up here in just a second. But this is part of a larger statement where David said, people who have stood up for what is right in history have suffered far more than I have. It is a great privilege to sacrifice for the country, and I am confident the outrage produced by this judgment will be felt by all Australians. I will not give up. And he won't. I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but he made a video, which you can find on his YouTube channel, before he went to prison. He made, like, if you're watching this, I'm in prison, was kind of the gist of it. And I think he had kind of come to some level of acceptance. But I'll be honest with you guys, he's not good. Like, prison's awful for anybody, as we just heard. I mean, Aspen was just in like a jail. And it's awful for anybody. But David in particular has had to deal with death threats from other inmates, and he's not safe. They've had to move him a couple of times. He obviously can't have his service dog. He has very limited contact with the outside world, including his lawyers. Like, they make it as difficult as possible to consult with your lawyers. He has 2 daughters who I think are like in their early 20s, maybe. He has very little contact with them. So he's not doing great, which makes me very sad as his friend. So yeah, it's just a very frustrating situation. So this is his lawyer. If you want to follow her, at Worlds with a Z on fire. And she says, boom, we've locked in top senior counsel for David McBride's high court fight. This case could rewrite whistleblower law. It's historic. It's urgent. Join the fight for truth. Every dollar counts. And then she links they're using chuffed, which I don't know if that's an Australian thing. They're the only ones I've ever seen use it. But it's expensive, unfortunately. We just heard Aspen talking about $15,000 just to fight her case, and David's going up against the entire Australian government, the military, all of them. So it's very expensive, unfortunately. So if you can, please. Oh shoot, I meant to get his mailing address and put that in the slideshow too, so that I could get you guys to write him. I guess I could just pull it up and just bring it share screen for that one thing. I apologize. I've had quite the day today, and I've been sick. I'm so whiny. Listen to me. But yeah, David's in a really difficult spot. He's got a huge fight still ahead of him. If he doesn't win, and even with this appeal, that could take who knows how long, months. They like to drag this stuff out for as long as humanly possible. We saw that with the Assange nonsense. That they just dragged it on and on and on and on, and it's so frustrating. So yeah, it's difficult for him. So what I like to do, and what I've been doing, is I've been sending him postcards. You can send him a letter. That's also excellent, because reading material is always good. But I've been sending postcards because that gives him a little something. He can decorate his cell. Oh, it's so dystopian, but he can decorate his cell with that, which is nice and gives him a little, let's see, where is that? Is that the right? Okay. So here's the address. You'll see that there in the middle of the screen. Please make sure that you write it exactly as you see it. They're very particular. And also, my friend Paula just had a letter returned. We don't know why. But when she was pointing that out, she said that you have to write your address on the back of the envelope if you're going to send a letter. And then there's also some guidelines there. Obviously, no glitter, no glue, all of that good stuff. So just be mindful of what you're sending. Be mindful of the fact that your letter is almost certainly going to be read by some guard. So don't be silly. And just, you don't have to make it lengthy. You don't have to write a novel, but just tell him who you are, that you support him, that, we're still fighting. I think just contact with the outside world is so beneficial for people who are in prison like that. And I don't want him to feel like he's been forgotten. And hey, Senate girl. Yes, David has the sweetest laugh ever. And also legit the best voice. I could listen to him talk all day. He's got like kind of this gravelly voice and the Australian accent. It's glorious. I love just listening to him talk. So, and he's just a good dude, you guys. He really is. As I mentioned earlier, I don't trust a lot of people. David I've never met him in person, but he's a great dude. He's a genuinely kind human being. He cares about other people. He really believed, and I agree, that he was doing the right thing. Exposing wrongdoing should always be celebrated. And unfortunately, it's not. So please go write to him. Please donate to the Chuffed if you are able to. Understand I'm asking for multiple donations here tonight. So I apologize for that. But this kind of stuff is expensive. Halo's daughter's case, David's case, anything where you have to go to court, you guys know. And they do that on purpose. They really screw over poor people in the court system. They make it extremely difficult for you to fight back.
Please clap.